Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm very grateful to the three speakers, Mr. Muhammad Durrani Sahab, Sohail Warraich Sahab, and Mohtarma Mishaal Malik for the thought-provoking and speeches that have induced soul-searching in a lot of people like myself. The struggle of the Kashmiri people is such a great struggle, but as was pointed out, the global media, the global powers are indifferent to what is going on in Kashmir. Maybe until recently, the Norwegian Prime Minister and other dignitaries went there. And it is partly because, it is not only because of the interests and alignments of the great powers, because India is a great market, and India is needed as a bulwark against China in the new phase of global politics. It is also because there have been phases when the Pakistani government has not played its role properly. Mr. Modi was denied an entry visa into USA because the State Department had reported that he was responsible for the massacre of thousands of Muslims, about 2,000 Muslims in Gujarat. When he became the Prime Minister, our government should have protested or launched or sent a letter to the American government that he should not be invited to USA. Our government has never protested on this formally on any forum. And there was also a time when the government did not talk about Kashmir. I remember Malik Sahab came to Punjab University. In fact, we had invited him several times to Punjab University. And he said on one occasion that the government of Pakistan has forgotten us. It does not talk about us on the UN forum. It is not helping us in other ways, but our struggle will not die. We will not die like this. Our struggle will go on, and we will fight independently. And they have established, by the grace of God, that this is an indigenous movement which has reached an intensity and a breadth and depth which the Indians could not conceive of. The new narrative, there's so many things in this new narrative. But I think in Pakistani educational institutions, certain things need to be taught. Certain facts must be taught to our young people. We did not study these things in school, for example, and we had to read about them when we grew up, much later in life. Now in the new narrative, which, as Durrani Sahab said, after 1988, things have changed. Things changed after the assassination of General Ziaul Haq. The first gang rape, recorded gang rape in India by the Indian security forces of women in occupied Kashmir took place, I think, in 1990. Now in universities and in our own government should keep a record of each such incident which is reported, and should also use its intelligence to find out unreported cases and have the precise data as to how many incidents have taken place. These are very, very grave violations of human rights. And one thing must be, we must understand, when you violate human rights, then the matter becomes the subject matter of international law. International law supersedes your constitution, your national laws. So we have to invoke international law in order to seek redress for the grave violations of human rights that have been carried out in occupied Kashmir. And we must emphasize this on every forum. Our government should do that. We should do that. But we must educate our young people on the social media and through courses in syllabi about it. The human rights, there's a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is about 30 articles. There's the right to equality, the freedom from discrimination. The Kashmiris are facing discrimination throughout India and in the occupied territory, which is their own homeland. Right to life, liberty, and personal security. And we all know that this is being violated. Freedom from torture and degrading treatment. You just saw this song where people have been killed. So many people have been tortured. Even Mr. Malik was tortured. If I remember correctly, he either jumped from several-story high building, and I noticed that, yes. And his jaw has partly been immobilized, if I remember correctly. I talked to him about it. There is freedom from arbitrary arrest and so on. Then there is the freedom for peaceful assembly and association. Each of these human rights is being violated grossly every day in occupied Kashmir by Indians, by the Indian government. And we have to take this up on every forum, not just the UN, but also now, for example, the government of Pakistan is engaged in providing Americans an exit, an honorable exit from Afghanistan. Then our government should also talk to the Americans that they should also help us with the Kashmiris. Why does the government not take that up? Why is the government dealing with Afghanistan separately and not engaging the American government, the American State Department with regard to Kashmir in it? The UN resolution is there. The international law is there. Human rights are being violated. So we have to do this. We have to become aware of this. The government has to do this. The social media, the youth will only do it if it becomes aware of these things. So you have to look yourself, make Google searches on international law and see what is being violated. And I remember that in Punjab University, we had set up a cell on Kashmir, which was to study the cases of rapes in Kashmir. We had also, in the last year of my vice chancellorship, announced scholarships for students from occupied Kashmir to come and study here. But the government, the Higher Education Commission, they can become involved, and we should provide scholarships to young Kashmiris to come and study here from across the borders, from the occupied territories, so that they interact with Pakistanis, with the young people, and those young people will then come to know what is going on in Kashmir better from first-hand sources, and the bonds that will be formed in this way will have profound value. The BJP is the parliamentary arm of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swami Sevak Sangh, which is, everybody knows, is a fascist organization. And Shivram Munji, who was one of the chief architects of RSS, went to meet Mussolini in 1931. And he wanted to learn from them as to how that organization was built so that RSS could be built on similar fascist lines. The Hindutva followers, Hindutva is the supremacy of Hindu religion, they showed admiration for Germany. And when the Germans carried out the genocide of a lot of people, including the Jews, they went and they wanted to study and make use of that as a technique for eliminating the Muslims in the region. So all these things should be known to us. The roots of BJP are in RSS, and the roots of RSS lie in Hindutva, in a fascist philosophy. Although we should not, they say we shouldn't talk about the past, but actually we should also be aware of the way the subcontinent was divided. We are not taught in schools that there was a census in 1940. And in this census, the number of Muslims in the subcontinent was at 9 crore 38 lakhs. The number of Hindus was at 20 crore 61 lakhs. The ratio was 1:2.17. For every 100 Muslims, there were 217 Hindus. So if the subcontinent was to be divided, it should have been divided in accordance with this ratio. But we all know that a much larger tract was handed over to Hindu Congress, and a much smaller truncated piece was given to the Muslims. Not only that, the 7 provinces where the Hindus were in a majority were handed over intact to the Hindus. The 6 provinces where the Muslims were in majority were not handed over intact. 3 were handed over intact. The remaining 3 were truncated, divided. Punjab was divided. Bengal, where the Muslims were in majority, was divided. Assam, where Muslims were in absolute majority, was, from there only Sylhet was given, and that too after a referendum. All these facts must be taught in schools. We must know the injustice that was heaped upon us. And there is correspondence between Auchinleck and Lord Mountbatten. Auchinleck said that in Pakistan that we are giving to the Muslims is indefensible. It is just 300 miles across, and if you include Kashmir right up to the base of Parmis, from Karachi to Parmis, it's 1,100 miles. Further, in that correspondence, it is also very clearly mentioned that we must ensure that Calcutta goes to India. So all these things we must know. The wrongful deviant, the wrongful situation that we face in Kashmir today is also part of that larger strategy of a section of the British rulers. Because Wavell was not part of this. Wavell was very fair. And he was removed at the last moment to precipitate a crisis in which eventually there were riots and Muslims were annihilated in large numbers by non-Muslims who were armed and prepared for the purpose. Anyway, so for Kashmir, we have to know the facts. We have to know the number of times. We have to make a list of the human rights violations, of gang rapes, of people who were targeted killings. And this targeted killing of the intellectual elite is something India has learned from Israel. They are both in intimate interaction regarding the situation in Palestine and regarding the situation in Kashmir. So this was picked up from there. It was done in Iraq also. So this is a very, very serious thing. And I think the song that was shown, in which the pictures were there of the people who have been killed by the Indians, the targeting killings of people who were highly educated or were in coveted professions, that should be shown on Pakistan TV with a little note saying that these are the people, these are some of the people who were targeted because they were highly educated, because they were in professions that are coveted professions. This is something people will pick up very easily, and it should also be distributed in the social media. Durrani Sahab has been involved in building this narrative for now almost 3 decades. It is true that the struggle must remain peaceful, but it is also true that unless substantial international pressure is put on India, through the efforts not only of the local Kashmiri people, but also of Pakistanis, those 700,000 to 1 million Indian troops will stay in Kashmir. There can be no free and fair elections in Kashmir. And they do not have any intentions, I think, so far, of holding free and fair elections in Kashmir. The elections in India are going to be held now. And Mr. Modi represents a phenomenon in India which can either destroy the remaining minorities in India, or which can also lead to the breakup of India if it is not tamed, if it is not moderated. And perhaps in India there is a very strong lobby also which stands for moderation, which stands for the rights of Kashmiris. And that lobby must not be ignored. We must be in contact with them, because we all want, as Mishaal said, that we want peace. We do not want dead bodies. We want to move on with our lives. Young people have to grow. They have to learn things. They have to experience life, and so on and so forth. And I must also finally make one more point. These are all interconnected things. You know, our own media makes a lot of noise about this party or that group which is operating in Kashmir, or which is extremist or so and so. I will not take any names, but you all know. But our media never mentions the organizations in India which are receiving money from abroad, help from America, Hindus living in America, in Britain, in Europe. And there are so many organizations which have this hate-filled ideology. There is the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, VHP. There is Bajrang Dal. There is Durga Vahini, Shiv Sena, Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, and there are many other groups, Shri Ram Sena, Karni Sena, etc., etc. And these groups are receiving money from abroad, but our government should take that point up at the UN fora. And I think this year the foreign minister spoke at the UN, and Kashmir was mentioned. But there was a time when Kashmir was not mentioned in the UN at all. The Prime Minister that we have, you may like him or not like him, but Imran Khan is a truly international figure. He was known internationally across the globe, and I have experience of this, long before he became the Prime Minister of this country. So if Mr. Imran Khan takes upon himself to talk to the global leadership about the Kashmir issue, it will have a greater effect than the lobbying by any other Prime Minister that we have had so far. So I think that Mr. Imran Khan has a different kind of stature, which was not enjoyed by his predecessors, which can be used. He also has a support base in India, so we should make use of that as well. And finally, I will end up by saying that we must teach certain things in the syllabus. Why do the Turks love us? Because in the courses they are taught, the people of this region, the Muslims of the region, supported Turkey during the First World War, at the end of the First World War, when Khilafat was being broken up. So the Turkish students read this in their textbooks, and that is why they love Pakistanis so much. If tomorrow you change the narrative in the textbooks, things will change. Thank you very much.